Hey, everybody. I forgot to put us in the picture. Welcome back. Time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. Look, my hair's all over the place. John Sunter is here, very well coiffed and ready to go. Ron Randall. Good to see you, Ron.
Good to see you too, John. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Oh, thanks for coming on, man. Hey, congratulations. We're here to talk about Trekker. And, man, a long-running sci-fi comic that you've been doing. Am I right? It started at Dark Horse?
It did. It started at Dark Horse back in the 1980s. The first issue came out in 1987. But I can explain why it's taken so long to get to where we are now. But that's another long story.
Well, feel free. I mean, seriously, this is a terrific looking sci-fi epic.
Thanks.
That there she is, right there, boom.
Yep.
And we're today we're talking about and forgive me, I'm gonna screw it up. Incident on Rigel. What is it?
Reckoning on Rigel.
Reckoning, of course it is alliterative. Reckoning on Rigel, yep. Indeed. Here I've got the thing there, and here's the description of this arc. Deep in space, Mercy St. Clair, Molly Sundowner, and the small band of companions finally arrive at the secret base of Rigel, the heart of the resistance to the oppressive Galactic Ruling Council. But almost immediately on their arrival, the station is rocked by sabotage and betrayal from within. Only Mercy can save the lives of everyone on board if she can uncover the heartbreaking truth of the saboteur's identity and stop the traitor in time. Da-da. I like it.
Hey, kids, that's comics,
Damn straight, man. No, that's awesome. So, yeah, first, give me the 10-cent tour on Trekker. Obviously, this is a sci-fi space opera, and you've got your characters, Mercy, and tell me about Mercy and the cast.
Yeah. The quickest bullet description for the series I can give, it's a science fiction series about a young woman who's a bounty hunter. That very quickly gives the gist of things. But what I really like to say about it is that it's I can see that all those years ago, Dark Horse, like I'm saying, as a sort of like a very long form, protracted sort of novel, where a character, in this case Mercy St. Clair, starts in one place. The opening stories first of all, they were done in black and white, and that just really fit Mercy's sort of black and white view of the world. It was a very grounded on a gritty, decaying urban city, like something out of Blade Runner, sort of a movie that sort of, had a lot of tones I was sort of going for in those early Trekker stories. And the idea of the series was she would start there with those sort of very small scale. I shoot somebody, I get paid for it. That's all she really wanted life to be about. That was the sort of the limit of her scope and scale of things. And the series is about her gradual evolution as a human being, as a character, the way the world sort of cracks us all open and forces us out of whatever our comfort zone is. And very early on, I'm hoping the readers were getting the sense that Mercy was actually, willing or not, a character of some sort of destiny, someone with a larger role to play in things than just an original black and white thing that she saw in herself. And that's been the thing that's kept me engaged in this series all this time is, I love science fiction. I love everything from old Flash Gordon swashbuckly stuff and, Star Wars is sort of updated version of the same thing. And I read the novel Dune when I was a kid and Asimov's Foundation trilogy. And again, I love Blade Runner and Aliens. So many things about science fiction, decades of science fiction just, dumped into my head. And when I had the chance at Dark Horse back in the 80s, when I was invited to just basically create my dream project, at least that's the way I interpreted their invitation, and that's what I did. And so I just poured everything I loved about science fiction and about good comic book storytelling, and trying to have compelling characters that felt real and believable, because that's the heart of it all to me, is the characters. And I just poured all that stuff into this series. I thought, this is my one shot. I said, I will never get an invitation like this again in my life, to be paid to draw just, my dream project. And I was right about that. I've never heard that sentence again. So this is my one shot. I was swinging for the fences. I wanted everything. I wanted to be a small, intimate, very personal, emotional story, and also eventually grow and evolve into this big, galactic sort of scale epic. And and I was growing as a writer all that time too. So back when I first started, I didn't know how I was going to pull all that off. But I think
Sure.
by now I've been doing it long enough. I've got to know the characters and the world long enough. Trekker had some long publishing hiatuses in there too, just because it was a hard sell trying to find the audience for a book like that back in the mid '80s. Science fiction, female-driven science fiction action series where she is dressed for her role of being a badass bounty hunter, going out and tracking down desperate, criminals. But anyway, so there have been fits and starts with the publishing. So recently, in the last several years, I've turned to Kickstarter as the way that I figured if I can find the right support directly with the readers or the backers. I had no idea what that level of support would be when I launched my first campaign. That was a nerve-wracking moment in my life when I hit the launch button on the first campaign, but it took off and did really well. So I've been able to gain the support from my readers directly to continue the series now in a way that I think serves the whole series the best. It's a series of trade paperbacks. Each one's a full, complete, self-contained action adventure story because I'm I'm all about the artistic desire to tell this young woman's life story, but I also love crash landings on swamp planets and desperate shootouts and explosions like any 12-year-old should. So but so that's why I just want to put out each of these stories to work as a great ripping yarn, as we used to say.
100%, man. No, definitely. So how far back was your first Kickstarter?
That was back about 4 years ago now. I'm really terrible
Wow.
at dates, but 2017, I think.
Okay. And when did it start on Dark Horse? Like you said, the 80s, right?
Yeah. 87 was when the first issue came out. So yeah, one of my readers thankfully pointed out to me, because I just don't pay attention to these dates too much, but someone said next year is going to be like the 35th anniversary. So I'll have to plan some special Kickstarter related events for that to try to mark. I mean, it's, one of the strips that I loved when I was a kid, reading comics in the newspaper and stuff was Prince Valiant. I'll let Flash go to it. And that was a thing where Hal Foster, the creator of Prince Valiant, he'd start off by doing a newspaper strip of adapting the Tarzan stuff, but then he wanted to create his own world and explore it, and so he created Prince Valiant, and that was what he spent his career doing, and that's what everybody thinks of Hal Foster for, and I like that. I've got that same kind of temperament. I'm not that same level of talent. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to draw too many parallels between me and one of the absolute masters of the field. But insofar as the idea about creating a world that would have, for me at least, enough depth and interest and characters that resonated well enough that I could craft my career out of basically trying to tell that tale. That's what I've been trying to do, and I feel really fortunate that I've been able to keep it up.
Well, I'm going to show your current your online page where people can follow. Great. Excuse me, my screen is freezing right now, but I hope it'll unfreeze, and if not, you might have to talk and vamp for me until I can sign back on.
No problem.
Right now it's freezing. But what my intent was to show your website, and all right, there we go. Trekkercomic.com, because as you say, you've got this Prince Valiant and Hal Foster kind of template. Mm-hmm. And it looks like, as I share here, can we see it? There it is.
Yep, got it.
Now I've reduced the size of it, everybody, but essentially it's a page. Is it a page a week, a page a day?
It's a page a week. I post a new page every Monday, and I've been doing that since 2011. It's been posting faithfully. I did put it on a little hiatus at one point when the story on the website was getting ahead of where the published books were coming out, and we were getting dangerously close to important spoiler territory. So I just had to pause it for about a month so I could get the new book out to all the backers. I want them to have it in hand first. The website was always designed to just sort of be an archive of all the stories, sort of a digital billboard, so to speak, that people could stumble across Trekker there, sample a little bit of it, and if they like what they find there are links there too where you can buy the books or go to the Kickstarter, of course, because some people do web comics as a hobby, but this is my career. This is the way
Well,
that
sure.
this is the way I put oatmeal on my table. So,
100%, man.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so but all the stories are up on the website. When the model is going right, then the books come out and they're in readers' hands first, and then you go to the website and you just see them, sort of like I said, sort of the archive for it there. Yeah.
So is your previous arc, is it Hunter's Moon? Is that what's currently
Yeah,
running
yeah, that's the one
on
that's
the
posting
website?
now. Yeah, that's the one that's posting now. And if the timing goes well, we'll get the Hunter's Moon story posted, one page a week, and then probably the backup story will post there. And if things go well, by the time that's done posting, this new book, Reckoning on Rigel, will be out to backers, and then it can start posting. So that's the way I'd like to have this thing go. It's a lot of work.
Well, supporting Reckoning on Rigel, you go to trekkerkickstarter.com, and that will send you to Ron's Kickstarter page. And for newbies that really want to sample, you could start at the beginning at trekkercomic.com and go to that first book. So is the first book a colorized version of your first story, or this is all the post Dark Horse story stuff?
Yeah, no, the first if you go to the very first page on trekkercomic.com, that's just a black and white scan of the original black and white version of those books I did at Dark Horse. So that's what's posted on the website, is all the black and white comics as they first appeared at Dark Horse. Last year, so all those earlier stories I'd done at Dark Horse, serialized at Dark Horse Presents. She had her own series for a while. Then we did a couple of trade paperbacks through Dark Horse too. And all that stuff is out of print now through Dark Horse. So last year I ran a Kickstarter to fund a massive hardcover book. It's 520 pages long or something.
Wow.
Where I collected all of those original, all the out of print stuff, every single page of Trekker stuff. And I called it the Complete Journey Volume 1. Volume 1, because there will be a Volume 2, But
Sure.
and so for that, to make the complete journey and to have all the stories appear in the same consistent format, it's slightly oversized, And also I went back and I colored all those earlier stories that had never appeared in color before. Over 200 pages of stuff that I had to add color to, stuff that was originally intended to be done in black and white. So coloring that stuff was a little tricky. You don't want to go overboard with special effects and stuff. Those pages can just look choked and overly dense, I think, when you do too much work in the color on pages that are already really worked hard in black and white. But anyway, so yeah, my goal is to have every single page of Trekker available for people to get and hold in their hands and read. So that was the most ambitious Kickstarter I'd done at that point, and it did very well. I was happy to see that people wanted to get that whole set of books like that.
That's great. You've got a couple endorsements here from people on Facebook and YouTube. Here, Jeff Messer. Ron is a great guy and a master of crowdfunding. In many ways, I look up to Ron and how he's doing it these days. A humble genius, paving the way for many other Kickstarter dreamers. And then R&D, Rad Adventures Network. Ron's Kickstarters are amazing. Every single campaign has been delivered on time like clockwork, and the rewards are always top-notch. There you go, man, from the people themselves. I think that's terrific. So,
yeah, that's great.
Absolutely, man. And again, tell me more about your characters. Tell me about everyone that Mercy's hanging around with and who she has to deal with every story.
Right. Well, so Mercy started off. She saw herself as being a loner. If she had her own way at the beginning of the story, she would sort of be like this implacable bounty hunting machine. But from the very first story, I was trying to tip the readers off to the fact that there's a lot more going on to her than that. So gradually, she's evolved over time. She went through a couple of awkwardly lame sort of failed relationships until she realized that she was in love with Molly, her friend Molly, who is Molly's a musician and a shop owner. She ran a music store, and the two women would seem to have nothing in common, but their bond is very strong. And so a few years ago, and that was something that when I first began the series, I didn't know that was what was going to happen. But I gave her Molly as the best friend, but it just became clear very on that that's what was going on. And I've had readers say, "Oh, I could tell right from the beginning that these two were, meant to be together." So readers were a lot more astute than I was, and certainly more astute than Mercy was. But the series, I think, really, for me, it sort of reached an important new level. It leveled up when they got together. I think it just opens up so many doors of possibility to explore with Mercy as a human being, and her emotional landscape is just been exploded by this. So that's central to where things are at with the series now, and getting a chance to try. I found out I didn't know it, but it turns out I like writing romance. Who knew? Yeah. Also, another character that's important to Mercy's journey is a guy named Jason Bolt, who is he's an operative for this organization, Rigel, which Mercy's been on a quest to find out more about for a lot of reasons. Rigel is a group that is resisting the central council, this very oppressive government, and they're very idealistic. They want to use non-lethal methods. They have all sorts of gadgetry and stuff that Mercy just dismisses as being naive toys, because they're trying to win this fight on a high emotional level, and Mercy finds that completely naive and ridiculous. Then a few stories ago, there was this revelation that her own mother had been one of Rigel's earliest agents, and Mercy had, of course, no idea about this. Both of her parents died when she was young, but that certainly pulled the wool out from under her, turned her world upside down, whichever cliche we want to use. So for quite a while, for some stories now, she's been on a quest to find the secret hidden base of Rigel and get answers to what was her mother's exact role. What does that mean for her? She's trying to find out who she is, what her place in the world and in the universe really should be. And she's not too thrilled about what some of those answers might be. And that's one of the reasons this story is called Reckoning on Rigel. And in this latest story, it's when Mercy finally arrives at that base. She's there looking for answers. And what she finds instead is this disastrous, traitorous presence there in Rigel, which threatens everything. It threatens the resistance. It threatens the lives of everyone on board the station, all that sort of stuff. So the series is one where I try to have, every story, I try to ramp things up. When the stakes get higher, the scale is larger, and the complications just grow. And Reckoning on Rigel is definitely reaching a culmination of a certain amount of that sort of arc.
That's great, man. Yeah, that's incredible. Keep going.
Going to do my best. As I say, when I first started the series, I love the scale of a story like Dune, which just it's so breathtaking in its scale and scope and vision. And I knew that I didn't have the writing chops to do that. I didn't know. I was just a beginning writer when I'd been drawing comics professionally for a few years, but Trek was the first time I had a chance, build my own world and stuff.
Sure.
So it worked out really well that the series begins with her just on the streets of a city, and she's out trying to track down a mobster, and then she's going through the blasted wilderness. It's almost like a Western, really. One of the early stories is she's out in the blasted wastelands trying to track down a mass murderer who's on the run. It could have been a couple of guys on horses chasing each other across the plains or something. But even in those earliest stories, I was planting seeds. She meets this Jason Bolt character right in the first adventure, and Rigel is referred to. She's never heard of it, but it's just something that's happening out there in the stars somewhere. And I knew eventually I was going to have to get there and take the characters there. So now I'm at the point where each of the stories now is very, very deliberately and intentionally taking us further along the steps of Mercy's journey until we get to the ultimate conclusion of this thing. No novel goes on forever, and if it's a satisfying story, there is an arc and a shape to it, and that does include a conclusion, a resolution to everything. So that's what we're aiming at. It's still a ways down the road. So people that are really enjoying Trek, I always try to reassure them that I'm really enjoying this journey too. I am in no hurry to write the end on the final story. At the same time, it's very important to me that we do get some resolution and conclusions to all this stuff. So that's a little bit more about the world and what I want to do with the characters.
Would you want to potentially, and again, as you said, this is down the road, would you stay in the Trekker universe and maybe tell other tales, or would you see yourself going on to something different?
I have an idea for things that I could do past, the resolution of this particular big epic. So
Sure.
if readers are interested, if I still have the wherewithal, if I could still hold the drawing tool in my hand and my eyes aren't gone and my brain isn't gone, if I've got more chance and energy and interest, there's other things I want to do. One of the things I do in all the books now, in fact, is so there's the main story in every one. The last time it was Hunter's Moon. This time it's Reckoning on Rigel. So that's the main feature, the big story. But I also have a backup story, sometimes two. And the backup stories, I really enjoy them because they're not the big action adventure scale, statement story.
Sure.
They're like the quieter moments. They're taking the characters and seeing them in more personal settings, and that just sort of fleshes out and I think enriches the Mercy's world and the universe that we're playing around in some of these characters in a way that I don't want to. I mean, some of that happens in the main story too, but I'm trying to. I strive for a certain balance, and I try to keep the pace going in these stories where there's a sense of forward momentum, like there is in any great action adventure tale. So sometimes I'll be in a story and I'll say, this is really nice. I will put this moment in this story right now because I think it enriches this moment. It gives the readers some information that will really help to make the story work well. But there are other parts of the story that I think are interesting. They just don't belong here right now. So I can use a backup source to do that. So in some ways, I'm thinking of, well, when this entire story, this entire series comes to its resolution, there are other things that might be fun to explore as well. So we'll see. But that's years down the road, folks. Don't worry.
That's great. That's excellent. And of course, people have been following your work at places like DC. Certainly, you had a big impact on Supergirl. So that's really great to see. And then again, another beautiful woman that you did a hell of a job with and everything as far as drawing her. And
thanks. That was a delight. She was, I've done a lot of work for hire stuff over the years, and sometimes you take the assignment that's offered to you, and sometimes sometimes the characters are ones that I have to work from the outside in to get to. I mean, like an actor would have to do.
Sure.
And sometimes though, you get a chance to draw a character and say, I've got a real clear take on who this character is to me. When I got to draw Green Lantern in the Justice League, he was a character I felt that I knew pretty well.
Which Green Lantern, Hal or Kyle?
Hal Jordan. Yeah, that's
okay.
My Green Lantern. I figured the best possible job planning you can have to be a superhero would be to be a test pilot, which is what Hal Jordan was. You got to be able to think fast and improvise and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, but so for characters like Hal Jordan, or when I got to draw, the Supergirl, I just knew how I saw that character, what they felt like to me. So that was a particularly fun. That one just sort of seemed to flow out of my pencil when I was drawing those pages.
That's excellent, man. And again, another great space opera character like Green Lantern. I can certainly appreciate that, and I'm a Hal guy as well. I mean, I'm like, I've said this about the James Bonds, and I'd say this about the Green Lanterns. I've yet to meet a Green Lantern I didn't like.
Right.
But yeah, I'm with you on Hal, and also the fact that he was a test pilot, and especially when he was created too. It's so funny how over the years they almost didn't know what to do with Hal. They made him a toy salesman and a truck driver, and truck driver kind of works.
Yeah.
You could kind of, and certainly we've seen our share of dystopian sci-fi where you've got kind of a post-apocalyptic trucker out there and stuff. But yeah, man, no, Hal's the man. So yeah,
there's my guy. Yeah, good job. You caught that. You pulled that right up. That's awesome.
Yeah, I try. Every now and then it's like, oh, okay, they're talking about that. Let me type real fast and grab an image and everything.
That's impressive. That's impressive.
So no, man, and for Supergirl. So which era were you drawing Supergirl?
This is about 2007, 2008. So yeah.
Okay. So was this post Loeb and J. Scott Campbell and them reintroducing Kara, or was this the?
Yeah.
Good.
This is the Kara version. Yeah.
Space Angel, the Matrix. all all the shit that John Byrne and company and Peter David all threw at us. It's like, hey, here's an idea. Superman's cousin. Very simple.
Yeah, really.
And a different story. I mean, that's the thing is like, again, there's like, well, there's too much, or whatever, too much baggage. It's like, not really. I mean, you're really, again, it's really the modern era where these characters have gone beyond their cipher, visual level, and we've gotten into their character and stuff. And it's like, yeah, she had a much different experience on Earth and the like than Kal-El. So yeah, explore the story, definitely.
Yeah, that's one of the things that when I was so as I say, Trekker's had its sort of on again, off again relationship with publishing, and there was a period of time where I did a bunch of, as I say, original bunch of stories through Dark Horse. Then for reasons we don't need to go into here, but I did wind up doing one issue through Image Comics. But with that sort of sporadic scattershot appearances, and each time I wasn't trying to tell just like a little novelty story. In my mind, each of these stories was another piece in the overall, Trekker mural.
Sure, the big epic.
So when you're producing the stories in that sort of scattershot fashion in different formats, and sometimes backup, serialized in Dark Horse Presents, their anthology book, sometimes a standalone story. It's almost like now you see it, now you don't with the readers. It's not like I'm playing hide and seek with the stories. They appear, then they disappear. And it just got to be so frustrating that I finally just said, I need to just put I'm not doing my series or my readers any good at all by doing a story that just comes and goes and can't be found. So I put the whole series on a hiatus until I said I will bring Trekker back, because I always knew I had to get back to tell the rest of the story. I'll put it back when I'm in a space where I can find a way to get back to it and tell the rest of the story in a sustained, uninterrupted way, so it can keep coming out. So it was on hiatus for a dozen years until I launched the website. Until I launched the website in 2011, I says, well, this way I can at least, there's no overhead, basically, the website. You build a website, and I had I forgot now, it was like 200 and some pages of the original art that had come out through Dark Horse.
Sure.
Just sitting in a closet. And so I just started the website, the webcomic, by posting those pages. And then and I made a promise to the readers that when the last of those existing pages was done publishing, the first page of the next story would be ready to go up. So I gave myself a deadline, and that's so important for any freelancer. So that was how I sort of forced myself to get back to doing Trekker. And because I knew that at the very least I could get it out on the website. As I say, though, the idea is that Trekker is not my hobby; it's my job. So I really wanted to get the stories in print, both because that's how I make money, and because that's how I feel the stories are best experienced. I'm old school enough for that. And then, as it turns out, luckily I was able to get Dark Horse to pair up with me again for a while and get a couple of stories back in print and all that stuff.
Oh, that's great. Yeah,
but then I just realized that still at Dark Horse, it was only going to be able to come out, and I could see that it was happening again. It was going to be, well, we'll do it. We'll put out a trade now, and then we'll see when we have room on our schedule to accommodate another Trekker story. And that's I'm not blaming Dark Horse or anything here. They're running a company. They got an entire publishing schedule and program that they got to follow. And Trekker was kind of a small fish in their pond. So they would insert it when they could. Mike Richardson's a friend. We get along really well, and I know that he likes Trekker. He's got an affection for the character since it was one of the earlier Dark Horse books and stuff. But I could just see that this just wasn't going to. Again, it was not going to serve my series well, which is why I sort of made the last ditch move and said I better try Kickstarter, because if that can work, and so that's how things are going now.
So from a publishing standpoint, is Dark Horse still a partner, or is Trekker now independently just you putting it out there on the website, doing these Kickstarters, etc.?
Right. Yeah, it's all just me now. So the books come out through something called Scuff Print Press, and Scuff is the name of Mercy's pet domesticated fox, and so Scuff Print Press is basically, folks, it's me.
That's great.
Trekker is kind of like it's a one-man show, folks. I do have I hire a really brilliant young woman named Alyssa Sala is my editor, and Caitlin Like is also a talented artist that I share a studio with a bunch of other artists here in Portland, and she helps me with the coloring a lot. But by and large, Trekker is me, and it's great. Like I said, I'm more creatively fulfilled now than I've ever been in my entire career. I'm doing exactly the stories I want, putting them out in the format that I want, working directly with readers and getting, just wonderful supportive feedback from the readers. It's all just great. It's just that I need about 12 more hours every single day.
I hear you, man.
Readers will say, "Hey, why don't we?" Fans of Trekker will think, "Oh, this would be cool to have this item and that item and this reward and stuff like that." And those are great ideas, but I don't have a cast. I don't have a crew of people that can help me
Sure.
figure out how to make all these items and stuff. So it's taking me longer to address some of those requests from backers than I would want to. But I have to prioritize the books. What I'm here to do mostly is make my comics, and the peripheral memorabilia and stuff is secondary to me. I know it's important and I love it, and I know some of the backers really like the stickers and all that sort of stuff. It's just trying to get the priorities right, because it takes a lot of time.
No, I understand. Well, then, again, given that it is your own show and everything, God, you've got a network with, I imagine, stores to carry the trades as well once the Kickstarter is over.
I would love to do that. I haven't been able to
that yet.
I haven't. I mean, what I do is on my campaign, I have a retailer rewards level where a store owner can get 5 copies of the book, at wholesale price basically, and I have drastically reduced shipping for them because I would love my books to be in comic shops. I've been very fortunate and feel very grateful that I've been able to reach out and expand Trekker's audience somewhat through just using the Kickstarter and the activities around that. The activities meaning me being on social media all the damn time for 30 straight days. So I'm finding some readers that way, and word of mouth is spreading it, and that's great. But of course, having the books present on the shelves at comic shops is just a whole nother way to reach the people that are going to like it. Figuring out how to get that distribution stuff to work out, that's a whole nother scale of operations. I would have to print up so many more books and all that sort of stuff.
Sure.
So that's a nut I have yet to crack.
Okay. Well, again, this shows the strength of the Kickstarter community, and I think that's terrific. And it's really been interesting watching really from the beginning of Kickstarter. I mean, I've been doing Word Balloon for 16 years, and I think 2007 might be around the time that I started, watching Kickstarter campaigns. Yeah. You told me off the air, was it Carl that helped you a lot, Kessel, that kind of led the way for you in terms of being a Kickstarter guru and what to do?
Yeah, I heard about Kickstarter from some other of my studio mates that had done campaigns, and some of other my colleagues that had done them. So I was a little bit curious about it, but I was told, and I certainly got the impression that it's a very complicated thing to try to figure out how to do them and stuff. So I was very sort of intimidated about the prospect and hesitant to do it. But when it got to the point where I just said, if I really want to, as we've been saying here, if I really want to try to take this into my own hands and have control over the way that these books come out and the schedule and the frequency, I felt I had to try it. Right around the time I was getting close to that point, realizing that the books weren't going to come out from Dark Horse on anything like the sort of schedule that I was hoping for, Carl, who had recently finished running his first really successful Section Zero campaign, and just loved the process and was energized by it. And he just said to me one time, "Ron, if you ever do decide that you need to take the step to go to Kickstarter, I want to help you." And so that was very encouraging. And so when I was getting ready to run my first campaign, Carl just gave me a ton of great ideas and suggestions and guidance that were invaluable in helping me to get my first campaign launched and have it be successful. And since then, Carl and I have talked a lot about how you mentioned the Kickstarter community, and we have what we call the Kickstarter creator community, where several of us who have run campaigns and have something in common with one another, the type of books that we do, our career backgrounds, whatever it is, can reach out to one another and try to, oh, I see you offered, this kind of a reward, or I'm getting ready to launch my campaign around the same time as you are. How about if we make sure to mention each other's campaigns and stuff? So that, and it's like, everybody who does this knows what it takes, and appreciates the journey that everybody else. We've all walked down the same path, and that's been great to discover how many other generous and really inventive and imaginative creators are out there that are using Kickstarter. It's using Kickstarter because you've got a story that you want to tell. That's in some way or another, it's a personal passion project that you either can't get a company to do as you want to, or maybe you're just not interested in making the compromise that it sometimes takes to get a book to come out through another publisher.
No question, man.
Yeah. So you got all this passion, and you sort of feel like you're all alone out there doing it all on your own.
Yeah.
So finding out that there is some kind of a support network out there by reaching out to other creators is great.
I agree, man. And again, yeah, the strength both from a creator and an audience standpoint of the Kickstarter communities. That word of mouth and again, telling the story you want to tell. And hey, man, you've been making comics long enough. You know how to story tell. You know what you're doing and everything. So I can appreciate that. Here, a couple other great comments here. Mr. Vic, late, but I wanted to say I read Trekker. I read it in Dark Horse Presents. Always great. You might have seen Comic Boom say, I love Trekker. I found a first issue last month, and now I see a Kickstarter. I think it's a sign. That's fantastic. Austin A. So grateful how well each and every Kickstarter campaign has gone for Trekker. I like that Obama avatar that Austin A. has. But Ed has a question. He wants to know, could you talk a bit about your experience with the Kubert School and working with Joe Kubert on Sergeant Rock? First, I'm going to ask you, which specific Rock project did you work on?
I worked on, I helped Joe out. So what I did on Sergeant Rock was a couple things. I went to the Kubert School, and when I graduated from, and Joe was I was in the second graduating class at the Kubert School.
Wow, that's great.
It was an incredible, being right place, right time sort of thing that I got to be there. So the guys in the first year, the upperclassmen, it was a 2-year program when I went.
Sure.
There were, Steve Bissett was there, and Rick Veitch was there, and Thomas Yates were all in that first class. And in my class, my classmates were John Tolliban, Tom Mandrake, Jan Duursema, Kim D. Mulder, and then the year after me had people like Tim Truman in it. So
wow, that's great, man.
Just some wonderful times, wonderful, great artists, and I gotta say, just wonderful human beings. Some of them, I've made some lifelong friends there. Yeah,
absolutely. Some of my favorite people in comics in all three of those classes. Well done.
And Joe was teaching. He was one of the classroom teachers.
Yeah.
There. So we got to work directly with Joe then, and what he would do is, as nearing the end of our second year, he would he saw the guys and women in the class that seemed like they were the most dedicated to pursuing comic books as opposed to some of the other commercial art fields that people went to that school to get trained in.
Sure.
And he sort of handpicked some of us and would give us these little 2, 3, 4-page backup stories, because Joe was still editing the Sergeant Rock book at the time. And
wow. Yeah.
And he was Joe Kubert, so he could do anything he wanted to do. So he would give us little newbies these little stories. And so when I graduated from I think I'd worked on 1 or 2 when I was still at the school, but mostly it was after I graduated. And I considered that my third year. And that was why I did the most.
Yeah, your graduate program. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. That was the most intense learning I did, because it was one-on-one mentorship working with Joe Kubert. What I would do is I would take home my little story, which Joe had marked up. It would be a script from some comics veteran writer like Bob Kandig or something. Joe was not intimidated. Joe, he was one of the masters, right? So he would, in his big sharp, he would scratch out lines of dialogue and rearrange words, panels and stuff like that and sequence. But I would have that script to work from. I would go home. I would do my little thumbnails of each page planned out in little, very sketchy schematic format. I'd call up Joe Kubert on the phone at his house. It's hard for you to believe it even now. Say, hey, Joe, I got these thumbnails ready for you to look at. Oh, come on over after dinner, Ron. So I'd drive over to his house, and I'd go up the stairs of his garage up to his studio, which is over the garage in his house. And I'm sitting there at Joe Kubert's drawing board, right next to Joe, elbow to elbow with Joe Kubert. And he's looking at my thumbnails. and taking out a spare piece of paper and said, another way you could do this panel is this, or maybe this. And he came out with 3 or 4 brilliant Joe Kubert compositions for each panel, making my story 100% better. And Joe wasn't doing it to show off. He wasn't doing it to intimidate me. He was doing it because Joe was so passionate about telling a story well. And that's what stuck with me all these decades later, is just that serve your story. Use the right pictures and words to make the story come alive for the reader and be vivid and memorable, so they'll come back for the next story and they'll keep reading, So that's what I got from Joe. He was a wonderful guy, incredibly generous. And it was never about Joe being a big shot and showing off. It was just, he was passionate about doing comics well. And if you were passionate about the same thing, then you were Joe's buddy.
I'm with you.
Yeah. So besides working on backup stories in Sergeant Rock, Edward had asked about what it was like working on the Sergeant Rock with Joe. There were 1 or 2 issues where the lead feature of the book was something that Joe had basically penciled, and I helped out by doing some of the inks with him on that stuff. But here's the thing about Joe. Joe was incredibly hands-on, and when you were working on Sergeant Rock, Joe felt about Rock the way I feel about Trekker. It's my baby, and Rock was Joe's baby. So if I would draw, God help us, a panel of Sergeant Rock and ink it my way, Joe would then go back and fix it. And I'm not joking. He would make it a good drawing of Sergeant Rock the way he should look, which is only one thing, and that's the way Joe draws Sergeant Rock.
Totally,
Russ Heath did a great Sergeant Rock too, but it was really because he was doing a really good job of doing what Joe would do.
Yeah, Joe's. I'm with you, man. No, that's great. And man, all those DC war books, if they are overlooked, boy, comic fans, you're really making a mistake, because it was such precision comic storytelling, as Ron is describing. Whether it was a 17-page story or a 10-page story or a 3-page story, and they're all so great. And it's my great regret that I had several convention conversations with Joe, and I never got a chance to interview him on the show. But he was incredibly gracious with his time and such a great guy, and right to the end, because I saw him at his last Chicago appearance, and we got a chance to really have a nice conversation, and always just so great and gracious with his time, and just an incredibly interesting man. And a great character.
Yeah, and he had that passion for storytelling, and that sustained him. There are a lot of, not many guys, I guess the best way to put this, that drew comics as long as Joe did, for as many decades as Joe did. At the end of their career, we're still drawing in such a way that you could feel the passion come and their investment coming off of the pages. But Joe's stuff, the last stuff I saw him do was he did a Tor story that came out through DC. That was Joe's character, his own sort of caveman.
Yeah, his own Tarzan character.
And oh my gosh, it's just gorgeous stuff, And decades earlier, when I was a kid, I came across Joe's adaptations of the Tarzan books on the spinner racks, and I had fairly recently read the first couple of Tarzan novels myself. And, I'd seen the movies, the John Weissmuller movies and stuff like that. And I thought, wow, it's really not like the books at all. And you read Joe's comics, yep, that's like the books. it was just magnificent. It was sort of had that sort of primal, visceral, sort of textured feel. When when Tarzan's out there in the jungles and he encounters a panther or something like that, the hairs go up on on your arms and the back of your neck, because it's scary and it's just savage, And yet, the Tarzan character himself, like the character in the book, had that savage aspect, but also that incredibly noble, refined part of him too. And so Joe was one of my heroes. So when I heard about him starting the Kubert School, I applied right away and had a phone interview. I'm in Oregon. He was out in Jersey, so I was 3,000 miles away. Had a phone interview and sent in my samples and got into the school that way. It was a game changer. There's no question about it.
Tell me about other teachers that were there at the time.
Yeah, Dick Ayers was there, longtime artist for DC.
I have a. You can't see it, but on one of my walls, in this room and everything. I have a Dick Ayers Iron Man that I commissioned from him, and it's terrific. It's one of my favorite pieces.
That's awesome. Hi Eisman was one of the teachers there. A great, such a funny guy, such a sardonic humor. I think I just had lettering from him, something like that. You know, he's a guy who could have taught any class in the world about comics, but it was all divvied up and people did different things. Dick Giordano was one of the teachers at the school.
That's great.
You know, legendary inker, was the managing editor of DC Comics for a while. In fact, that was a valuable connection to have made at the Kubert School, because I was one of Dick's students at the Kubert School, and then a couple years later, he's the managing editor of DC when I'm a young kid scruffing to make my way into the business. And one of the great things about Dick, you were just talking, John, about how great those war comics were at DC. And one thing about Dick Giordano, you know, he was working in an era, a lot of where basically superheroes is what you pretty much had to do if you're going to make money in comics.
Sure.
And a little known fact about Dick Giordano, the comics that he loved were detective comics and war comics and that sort of stuff. So when he was running the shop up there, that's when you could have some science fiction comics. You could have some jungle adventure sort of stories, like The Warlord got started, and then
Sure.
House of Mystery and House of Secrets. So, you know, they could have those kind of stories and war stories. He could have crime comics back in the late 70s, early mid 80s and stuff. DC was a wide open house for all this sort of stuff, and that was largely because that was the stuff that Dick really dug doing. So for a kid like me who liked drawing that sort of action adventure sort of stuff, having a guy like Dick who's, I get it, Ron, and so I've got some pretty good assignments because I was sympathetic spirits there with the head guy there, so that was good. So yeah.
No, that's amazing, man. Again, another one of those giants. Giordano. Did Tex Blaisdell, was he teaching it?
Yes, Tex. Oh my gosh. Tex,
nobody ever talks about Tex, but I have a Kurt Swan Blaisdell Superman page, and I'm so glad I do. And yeah, man, he's kind of the great inker that nobody talks about. Yeah,
he was one of those guys who was brilliant and a journeyman for decades, and he taught the ink. It was called Methods and Materials, if I remember right, was the name of the class. But it's basically how to ink with a brush, how to use the pen nibs and some of that sort of stuff. And Tex was just this he was such a laconic sort of guy. He just come in there and talk very sort of casually and stuff. And Tex is one of those guys. Most of the guys that were teaching at the school when I went, and again, it was a brand new school.
Yeah.
And so what Joe basically did, I believe, I can't speak for him, but I think what he did was largely he just got some of his buddies that had been working in comics for 20, 30, 40 years, newspaper strips, working in the production department of DC, line artists, editors, whatever, to come and help him make this school. So these guys had all the experience in the world, but they weren't natural teachers. They didn't know how to do that too well. So some of the teachers, and Tex is one of them, where he may not be great at, like presenting a formal lecture. This is how you render a forest or something like that, or how you create depth and perspective, But what I found out anyway was if I was working on something, so what you'd get an assignment from the teacher at the beginning of the class, and then you'd sit at your drawing board and be banging away on it. And then the teacher would sort of hang around and wander around. And if you were to say to him, Tex, I'm trying to figure out a good pattern to use to like suggest leaves on this tree, full tree of leaves, and the way the sunlight hit it, he would just take the brush out of your hands. Oh, maybe try this, bloop, 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 bloop. And it was magic. It was just magic, and you say, I get that. So, but he couldn't have articulated it in words, but you just put the tool in these guys' hands and they'll tell you everything you needed to know.
Teaching by doing. Absolutely.
Yeah, so as often as I could, I would try to invite the instructors and sometimes some of my classmates, just to, how did you do that? Or show me how would you do this? And so it was more of an interactive sort of thing, as opposed to not like being in a law school where you sit there and you're lectured to and you take down the notes and you pass the test.
Yeah, the Socratic method.
Yeah, exactly. This is more, hands-on learning and stuff like that. In other cases,
there you go. And it's the community of artists all kind of sharing their knowledge rather than, I would assume, competing. And again, you're learning from the guys that had done it for decades, that knew how to do it successfully. and continue to get jobs and get paid to do this. And that's the point of the school, is to create you and become a professional that will get jobs and have the skills that the market wants. So that's
and what the school had going for it then, and it still does now today. I'm sure. I don't know exactly who all is teaching there, but I assume it's from the teachers that I do know that are working there. These are all veterans who've been around, who know what it takes to survive in the career as a freelance comic book artist. It is not an easy thing to do. And you are disabused. I was disabused very early on from any illusions I had about being precious. If what Joe and all those teachers taught is, this is, you had a very hard-nosed, blue-collar sort of work ethic. You rolled up your sleeves and you just did the drawing. You drew and you drew and you drew and you drew and you drew. And you had deadlines and you made those deadlines, pal. You're not here to be the reclusive genius who sits alone in your loft waiting for inspiration to strike. You can do that, buddy. You'll starve to death. And I'm never going to have you draw a Sergeant Rock backup for me, pal, because you'll never hit the deadline. So that was the hard-nosed sort of reality about it. Now, again, Joe was a wonderful, very warm guy. He wasn't cold. He wasn't merciless, but he was a realist. And if you wanted to run with those dogs, you had to learn some stuff very quickly. It had nothing to do with how to draw. It had everything to do with how to survive while you're drawing. Would be one way to put it.
Yeah, it's deadline art. I mean, honestly, this has been a recurring conversation on my show where, and also for the people that are coming up now that don't have, for lack of a better word, formal training and learning on their own. A lot of them, it's, hey, they're figuring it out, and that's terrific. Can you figure it out within a 30-day deadline and hit that deadline assignment? Because a lot of these people that are coming from it in an opposite way of you, that are starting with their web comics and want to work for the publishers, they're used to being on their own timetable. And then when someone's like, all right, I got to get this done, by the end of the month, sometimes they can't do it and they can't figure it out. And it's like, well, then you can't do this job. You can do your own thing. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a really interesting time because of that. And again, this is a layman's observational perspective, but it does seem to me that as many newcomers that do get it and are able to hit the deadlines and produce great work are also facing that challenge of, you got to get it done in 30 days. And if you can't get it done, you're probably not going to get another assignment from that publisher.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that have changed about comic making. In one way, when legendarily, Jack Kirby would sit down and bat out 5 pages a day, of pencils or something like that. And a change started to happen. I say it really started to happen industry wide. There had been artists even in the 40s who do very glorious, gorgeous, lush comic book work. Lou Fine comes to mind.
Absolutely.
But it was really
Fine,
but really it was in the late 60s when Neil Adams hit comic books. It was like the comet hitting the earth, the comic book world, because he just upped the game. He just upped the game of the level of draftsmanship and the sort of finish your work had to have. That was a big change. And then a few years later, those jerks, the brilliant artists from the studio, Bernie Wrightson, Barry Smith, Jeff Jones, and Mike Kaluta, brought in all of these rich, lush, illustrative sort of approaches back into comic books that hadn't seen since probably the EC days, and then pretty soon everybody wanted to draw that gorgeous stuff, which is great. But getting that done on the same schedule that people were, batting out comics in the 50s and 60s, that's a hard circle to square, I think, is the way the phrase goes. So then you have artists who just went more and more into that intensely, lushly rendered direction. And most of those guys would draw comics for a little while, but eventually they wind up just doing covers, because you can't do that sort of stuff on in a sequential comic book month in and month out.
Absolutely.
So it's to do my job. It's a lot of it's picking your battles. And it often it doesn't even serve the story well to have each and every panel rendered lushly to the nth degree. It can bog things down. You can't focus your eye where on the key moment when every single moment you're trying to give equal amount of emphasis to.
Certainly.
So it can be tricky. And for the people who start off by being able to sort of take their time and put the thing out at their own leisurely pace, you have to learn a different set of exercises to do to use the muscles that let you get the massive amount. It's volume business. We're volume dealers here in comics, largely, and that doesn't mean that you can't do really good work, but you have to find a way to take the parts of your style that you can retain and bring it into this other sensibility, this other rhythm maybe of working would be a good way to put it. When I do talks, lecturing to little, the classroom, so like, grade school kids about comics, it usually starts with a show and tell, this is what I do, and but I always try to early on ask a trick question. I say, so this is just, you've seen what my job is. What do you suppose the most important thing is to be able to have as an ability to be able to do this for a living? And of course, what I want them is, you have to be able to draw really well. And usually they do. And then I say, that's very important. It's maybe the fifth or sixth most important thing. Because the most important thing is you have to enjoy having your butt in a chair drawing for hours and hours and hours with nobody patting you on the back or feeding you fudge or whatever. You've got to do it because you just want to do it. It's got to be as simple as that, or else you'll never be able to draw long enough to get good enough to make it, or be able to keep drawing and producing work long enough to make the deadlines. And other skills that you have to have that are more important than drawing beautifully are endure the ups and downs of a freelancer's career. The work can come and can go. There can be disappointments. You're going to get rejections from somebody or another. You're going to get your punches in the nose like any creative person does somewhere along the route. So there's all those sort of skills. I say being able to draw, you have to be able to draw at a certain level to serve the story okay. And beyond that, being able to draw really well, to me, that's only important to the extent that it allows me to serve my story even better. I am frankly not impressed when I see somebody drawing a gorgeous page if I don't know what the hell is going on in the story. That person, I would be happy to see them doing covers or illustrations, but my job is I'm a storyteller. And my job is to make that, I guess it goes back to Joe, right? This do the drawings in a way that serves the story well, so your reader is pulled into that story, gets to the last page, and they don't say, oh, what a clever artist Ron is, or what a nice bit of dialogue that panel had. I want them to say, that was a great journey I was just on. I just had a great, roller coaster ride or whatever, and I want to do it again. I want the next one. It's not about me being whatever. It's about the story being a good story, a good experience for the reader. That's what I'm after.
Well, again, I think it shows in the art that I've been throwing up here on the screen. And again, people, first of all, if to support Reckoning on Rigel, you go to trekkerkickstarter.com. And if you really want to get caught up on the story, the great news is it's all online for you right here at trekkercomic.com. And I mean, this sort of, as they call it, freemium sort of formula seems to work, Ron, because, believe me, they have that in podcasting as much as they do, comics and stuff. But really, offering what's come before for free, it seems to be working as far as both ends.
Yeah, it does. I do find readers that get the experience of finding the comic on the website, and then they'll find the Kickstarters, or they'll get the books from. So when I'm running the campaign, like I am right now, all the Trekker books you can buy. I sell the whole. I call it the Trekker library. So if you're new to Trekker and you want to take the deep dive and get it all, if you know, as I'm a completist and I know it's available on the website, but I want to read it and experience it in the book form.
Sure, you
can pick up the entire Trekker library that way. When I'm not running a campaign, I have an Etsy store. Like I said, I'm not in comic shops, so I'm your one-stop shop. And if you want to get Trekker, I guess for now anyway. But I try to make it all available. But certainly, I guess I'd say I believe in my product. I think if you find the comic and you want to read a few pages on the website, give it a try. I mean, if it's not for you, it's not for you. But if you like what you see there, I think there's a good chance you're going to want to get the physical books, because I got to say, people, the physical books are pretty cool, because one of the neat things you can do with Kickstarter, and what I'm doing is, you hit your initial funding goal. That means, great, I have enough money to cover the cost to, pay a printer to print the book out and pay shippers to get the book into the hands of the backers. But then you have stretch goals, and what I do with the stretch goals is make the book bigger and cooler. We add extra content to the book. Process posts where I share some of the pencil pages and ink pages and all that sort of stuff, and original concept sketches and all that sort of stuff. But then we also make the cover, give a cover a spot gloss and a special matte soft touch finish to the thing, and a wraparound cover thing. So the physical object of the trade paperback, it has all these extra nifty little enhancements on it, and then beyond that, it's adding some of those things we talked about earlier, the stickers and posters and prints and that sort of stuff get added as well. But that's one thing that wasn't on my radar when I first started Kickstarter. Like I said, I just want to get my books out there, and that's my bottom line.
Well, of course.
But when the campaigns do well, and I can make the book, the physical object of the book, even cooler, if it just sort of feels like it's enhancing the reader's experience, if they're paging through the book and they're just feeling even happier about the experience, why not? That's what I say.
Absolutely, man. No, and again, really, everything looks great here. I have a final look once again at some of the great art from Trekker.
And what this is, just a montage that I put together.
Yeah,
samples throughout the throughout the story. Because the story, I guess I should mention that I have the real great advantage that a lot of people who do Kickstarters don't have, where this entire story is done. I've got it all drawn. The pages are ready to go to the printer. I have some additional, like the backup story isn't done yet, because I draw some of the backers of the campaign into that backup story. So that and assembling some of the extra material has to be done. But the bulk of this issue, the entire lead story is completely finished. So I go through and I cherry pick some of my favorite images and use that to give readers a sample of what the book's going to be like in their hands.
That's excellent. A final comment from Trekker Talk. Rod Stretch goes, so much fun. The rewards are terrific. That's great. Good to see. And yeah, man, no, congratulations. I think, again, I'm glad that things are going so well. And but there's still plenty of time to back Reckoning on Rigel if you go to trekkerkickstarter.com. And Ali even comments here and says, beautiful art. Absolutely. I agree. So, yeah, man, no, you know what you're doing, Ron. It's that. Honestly, it's that simple. And again, it's a really solid sci-fi story that is this epic sci-fi story. So go to the Kickstarter campaign, catch up, pick up the trades. If you need more convincing, we do suggest you go to trekkercomic.com and you'll see the story as it unfolds from the beginning. And again, I don't think you'll be disappointed. So no, I'm really glad we're finally talking, Ron. And
me too, John.
It's an opportunity to let everybody know that Trekker is great, the Word Balloon audience know, and hopefully they'll become new additions to the Trekker audience as a consequence. So
I sure hope so.
Absolutely. No, my pleasure, man. And please come back. We'll do it again. I mean, I am sure that the next volume is already in its planning, and maybe you're already working on it. So,
Yep. The outline for the next story is done. I'm starting to work on the script now because, I have a hashtag that I use sort of tongue in cheek, and it's hashtag more Trekker more often, because that's what that's the goal here, is to have the books coming out on a regular, ongoing basis. So I'm working on 2 or 3 different Trekker projects overlapping at the same time to keep that going.
Excellent, man. Well, thank you, Austin. I appreciate the compliment.
Thanks, Austin.
And as Rad Adventures as well, I appreciate it very much. And to everybody, thanks a lot for watching. I hope you'll back Ron's efforts and go to trekkerkickstarter.com. And like we said, we've got just over 2 weeks left in the campaign.
Right.
For Reckoning on Rigel.
Ends on the 5th, August 5th.
Very cool, man. Well, everybody, join me in just under 3 hours, and I'll be talking to Dave Scheit about his book "Mayor Good Boy," the true story of a town that voted for a dog as mayor, and this is the children's version of that story. But we'll be talking about that coming up at 8 o'clock my time, 9 Eastern. I'm doing the conversion. 7 Central. Nope, 6 Central. Or pardon me, 6 Pacific. You know, I was told there'd be no math today. So what can I say? But thanks a lot for watching, everybody. And another big week of Word Balloon as we get closer to Terrificon, which I'll be flying out a week from Thursday. So expect some interviews revolving around